You ever see a 10-story tall, gigantic robot just give up on life? Well, we already checked out one weird-ass fan translation. Let's check out another weird-ass fan translation, but this one is actually really good. This is Remote Control Dandy. It was released back in 1999 for the PlayStation by who's turning out to be one of my favorite developers in the form of Sandlot, and published by Human Entertainment. It got a fan translation back in November, and despite the fact that this video is coming out in 2021, I'm actually recording it in 2020. So, hello 2021, hope your year's doing better than this one is. But anyway, this is a game about gigantic robots fighting each other, as is Japan's style, but it has a really unique twist on the flavor that was actually done in a couple of anime before this one, but this is probably like the first game that's really taken this concept and run with it. So, instead of actively being in the gigantic robot, you're a little kid controlling the gigantic robot with a remote control from a distance away. So not only do you need to control yourself in order to get a decent view of the area of the fight, but you also need to swap back to the robot and control it. And the robot handles like a sack of snails riding a sack of turtles. It is incredibly slow and clunky by design, and it reflects this in the controls. So the controls are very simple when you're on foot. You just run around with the D-pad, hold X to adjust your view, square to fire your gun, circle to jump, and press select to go to the robot. The robot itself, though, is completely different. So, your legs are controlled with the shoulder buttons. L1 is a step forward on your left leg, R1 for the right leg. L2 and R2 are back for the respective legs. Square and circle are your punch buttons, and they are quite slow, and, well, that's it for your basic controls. But you need to combine a bunch of these controls in order to have the best performance. So, in order to, say, do a more powerful punch, you can twist your body with the D-pad. So you twist to the left and right and up and down using those specific directional pad keys. And then if you, say, swing your body in from the right and then hit your right punch button, you'll do a rocket punch, which does more damage. Or if you look down and then on the process of looking back up, press the square button, you can do an uppercut, which will send the enemy flying. And in the case of the robot that I've got equipped right now, which is the robot you'll be seeing throughout this gameplay footage, he's got a bunch of extra special moves. So if you hold L2 and R2 at the same time, you'll crouch. And then if you press L1 and R1 at the same time, you'll jump. And that jump can take you pretty damn high and actually avoid an attack if you can see it coming. Or you can press triangle and circle while you crouch and do a super uppercut. There are also moves that take energy. You just saw one. So when you press triangle as the robot, you do a pose. This also brings up one of the absolute best lines of the game, which is, it is a requirement of robotics engineering for robots to pose before they do special moves. It's kind of great, actually. But yes, there are all sorts of little special moves you can do, like fire out long-range robotic arms, or have cannons that fire out from your shoulders, or do other sorts of weird things like that. And all of these have their own weird button combinations that you need to look up. The game teaches you the basics, so you'll know how to walk, you'll know how to punch, you'll know how to swing punch and do uppercuts, but that's about all it's going to tell you. You need to buy your upgrades, and then you'll need to look your upgrades up. They won't even give you like a training arena to practice with, which is honestly kind of a pain in the ass, especially when you need to go into the next mission. There might be an enemy making a beeline for a structure that you need to defend, and then you need to be testing out your new special move on top of that. It can be a bit much. Especially when these robots are as big clunkers as they are when they are like just in the game like this. So yeah, it can be a bit rough along those lines, but thankfully it's not impenetrable. You can absolutely overcome it, and getting better at piloting these robots is absolutely the core enjoyment of the game. When you're able to wander straight up to a dude, give him an uppercut, and then as soon as he gets up, just bring a fist down on his head and make him explode, it's the best. It is legitimately really satisfying to do that with how slow and clunky these robots are. But there is a bit more going on behind the scenes as well. So, in the game itself, once you finish the actual missions, you actually have your budget to worry about. And guess what gigantic robots that want to destroy the world do? Destroy buildings. So they'll be going around and beating the crap out of buildings, and you'll be needing to go and stop them as fast as possible, because the more buildings that are being damaged, the more that it comes out of your budget. You do get bonuses for successfully finishing missions, of course, but on top of needing money to deploy your robot, every building that gets destroyed will be taken out of your paycheck. So you need to be really goddamn careful about not only sending your robot into a building and knocking it over, therefore incurring yourself a payment penalty, but getting to the enemy robot and beating the crap out of them as fast as humanly possible, so that you don't need to worry about their tab on your bar tab as well. This can get kind of annoying later on, where in some missions they'll be posted on the other side of the map, and you'll need to be rushing over there, and by the time you do, 5 or 6 buildings will already be gone. They do tend to compensate you for this by making it so that the bonuses are huge, so that when they destroy like 10 buildings, it only takes away like half of it. But man, it can still be a bit of a drain on your resources if you let an enemy take out too many buildings at once. And then you combine it on top with a bunch of the other gameplay they've got going on the outside, like being able to upgrade your personal equipment, being able to add new weapons and abilities to the individual robots, being able to, what's the word I'm looking for? Being able to upgrade their armor and their turn rates as well to make them faster and more responsive and more durable. Not to mention that if you've got a bit of spare cash lying around, you can make it so that the people will approve of you a bit more. And when you do that, you can actually shake them down for a bit of money. It's not always worth, like, bringing their opinion of you right up and then bring them back down. But if you find yourself a little bit short on cash, and you've got, like, a high approval rating because you've been doing well at keeping them away from your, keeping them away from the buildings of the town, you can suck them dry for a bit of cash, which is good. Because, again, if they damage too many buildings and you run out of money, it's game over, and there's like 56 missions in this game. I'm like 25 missions in and I haven't gone too close to bankruptcy yet, but the difficulty is starting to go up, so God knows what might happen in the few missions that are next. So I'd probably recommend keeping a couple of extra save games around just in case you fall a little bit too far below that poverty line after the results of a particular mission. So yeah, that's the basic gameplay. There are also, of course, story events, and I'm not going to blame the fan translators for this because, frankly, the fan translators have done as good a job as you could hope, because not only have they translated all of the text that's going on in the story right here, which is written well enough. I don't know if it's the fault of the game's writing or the fan translation attempt, but they've also done things like the backgrounds. So you can see the Uoyama fish going on in the background of this cutscene, or even in the levels themselves, where you can actually walk by the Uoyama fish building. However, the game does also spice it up a little bit with a couple of extra situations they throw in there. I've only seen one of these. It's possible more might come up as the story progresses, but there is this one particular part where this big building of a company called Fujitsu Co., which is weird because Fujitsu was an actual brand, but whatever, they will actually be harassing the Uoyama fish people, and you can end up seeing their HQ destroyed in the mission. And then the daughter of the Uoyama fish store will come up to you and say, hey, can you crush this marketplace, which is trying to put us out of business with shady tactics? And then if you do, the owner of that marketplace will come up to you and say, please stop destroying our buildings. I will pay you to stop destroying our buildings. It'd almost be a compelling choice if the guy wasn't so shady. His name was Slim Shady. That was a terrible comment, I'm sorry. But no, he was legitimately the shadiest motherfucker you can imagine, so I didn't want to support the guy at all. It would have been a more interesting decision if he was like, hey, I've got employees and stuff that I need to worry about as well. Can you please not destroy my building? But hey, it's like 80s mecha anime, so it can't really be that complicated, can it? But I will point out that on top of like the game looking good in the cutscenes as well, so you saw how the art looked in there. It was good 2D art for 1999. The pixelation is not great, but then again, PlayStation 320 by 240 at most. You don't have much to work with, and they did a pretty good job there. And the voice acting is actually good as well. It's not great, it's not amazing, but it's good. I was fine with listening to it. I'll tell you what's annoying about it though, there's no auto function for the text boxes, so you can't just like press triangle and let it go. You have to hit the circle button every time you want to swap text screens, which is kind of annoying. But yes, presentation there, good. Presentation in the game itself, bloody great. Like seriously, look at it. It's legitimately really goddamn good looking for the PlayStation 1. Like, the environments can be a little bare from time to time. Sometimes they can be flat with like no environmental objects like strewn around or anything like that for you to really take in the atmosphere. But then sometimes you've got this fight here, like the one that takes place in the middle of Tokyo. And there's like street lamps, there's trees, there's a bunch of buildings around the place. The texture quality is great, and the just overall scale of it too, with you being this absolutely tiny little figure on the street with all of these bloody robots going on, with these two bloody gigantic robots having a fight right in front of you, and it just feels right. The presentation is really well done, and it's really helped out by the fact that like you've got sparks coming off the robots. The animations are really well detailed for 1999. You can really feel the weight behind all of these punches that's being thrown in, or when one gets knocked flat on its ass. Although it's surprising just how far into the air these punches can lift these robots sometimes, but I digress. But yes, it all looks really damn good, and it's got the soundstage to support it. Like I was talking about King of Crusher, for example, how that game's soundstage was really quiet. There was a bunch of sound effects you would expect to be there that were just kind of missing, and therefore it just felt kind of flat and lifeless. This game is the exact opposite. They've done a great job with making sure that everything that you need to really just picture this battle being a lot bigger and more epic than it actually is. It's a really nice touch. And then you get on to my favorite part of the game so far, at the very least. And this was so goddamn cool when it happened, and I'm kind of annoyed that it isn't happening more. And it's coming up in the gameplay footage right here, but I'm going to spoil it for you because it's like 20 seconds out. So, in this game, there is a story event that breaks the remote you use to control the robot. And the guys say, hey, we have a direct control system, let's do that. So, we hop into the gigantic robot and we control it from the viewpoint of above its head. And it's got all of like the tilting, all of just the weird little ways that it animates. And you need to control it from there in exactly the same way you do as the game. Like moving forward with your legs, throwing out the punches, twisting your body in order to get things like the uppercuts or the hammer punches or the jet boost attacks. And it is the coolest goddamn thing because it absolutely sells you on the scale of this world. How everything looks absolutely tiny from up here. How the robot controls it it's exactly the same controls, but it feels so much different. To the point where I'm really disappointed that you don't have the option to play around with this more, at least in the single player campaign. The single player campaign is actually quite long. I've put 5 hours into this so far, and I'm about 25 to 30 missions in, and the game's got like 56 missions. And it's definitely getting a fair bit harder as the game goes on. It's taken me a few tries to get past the last couple of levels for reasons I won't bother getting into. But it's not like this game is deathly easy and stays that way all the way throughout, especially when you're going through the tutorials and it's just like, go and beat up this target that just sits there and doesn't fight back. It's definitely getting harder as the game goes on, and yeah, I really appreciate it. They've done a really good job on this game. It is really satisfying to get better at controlling these gigantic hunks of metal, and that's not including the fact that there are like 4 different robots you can get. I've only seen a second one, which I wasn't a particular fan of, mainly because I'd already invested a bunch of money into Vordan, which is the first robot that you get. But the second robot has like a bunch of different extra special moves, he handles completely differently, and he has like, even like his basic moves are a bit different. Like that one, you put a leg back, you tap the move forward button of the back leg twice, and he'll lash out in a kick which is really goddamn useful. Then at the same time, you've got Vordan, who's got these Vulcan cannons that you can buy, which are really good for shooting down smaller enemies when they come up. And here's like a fist that he can fire out and punch enemies at the face with in long distance is always satisfying to use. And I don't even know what the other two robots are going to be like, but I tell you one thing, they're going to be interesting. So yeah, I really don't know what to say about this game other than it's really goddamn good. There are a couple of problems I have with the gameplay. So this next piece here is actually running at 250% speed. This battle took a really long time, and that's only because I had so much trouble keeping my camera straight throughout it, because the entire thing about having your viewpoint being from the view of like a 12-year-old down on the street while these robots fight on around you is that, well, if they get too close or too far away or one goes behind a mountain or what have you, it's going to be a bit difficult to keep an eye on things. So you'll spend a fair bit more time getting these robots to fight each other just by getting them close to each other before you can actually, like, let me try that again. You can see the robots, and then you can't see the robots, and you need to spend as much time adjusting your viewpoint as you do actually fighting the damn things. And the enemy robot isn't going to stop while you're running around, so you need to be quick about it. Also, despite the fact that this kid can fall from like a 10-story building and not take any damage whatsoever, if he so much as touches water, he starts to like melt. His health starts to slowly deplete, and it's kind of annoying, if I'm being honest with you. Also disappointing is that he doesn't seem to actually have like a view model. There are multiple times in the game where the camera flies over where you start, from where you're standing, but you just can't see him. Which is a little bit of a weird detail to leave out, considering how many other details they've managed to sneak into this, but okay. Although it is kind of funny when you beat the crap out of a robot. You do an uppercut as like your final move, and it sends the robot flying down onto you, but you take no damage whatsoever. Thankfully, a robot falling on you means that you don't have to worry too much about like instantly failing. You just take a little bit of damage, and you can reduce the amount of damage you take, which is quite nice. Man, it's even satisfying to watch these gigantic robots fall over. I showed you that clip earlier on in this video before my intro came in. They just had him like tripping over at absolutely nothing. It was actually the edge of like the shrine's pool of water. I mean, even just watching them fall over like that is just immensely satisfying because you know you got a good hit on them. But yeah, I wholeheartedly enjoyed Remote Control Dandy. Couple of minor problems with it. Would have been nice to see like some extra patches in the fan translation, but that probably would have been, excuse me, a little bit more difficult than just replacing assets and working out the ways that you can swap in new text. So whatever. It's still a pretty well done fan translation. I had not much problems in what they were saying, although I wish the instructions were a little bit more clear on how to do specific combos or just special moves, but whatever. As to how you can get it, well, unfortunately, without piracy, it's not really possible. As far as I'm aware, they're not selling this game anywhere, and even if they were, the only place I can imagine them selling it is on the PlayStation Store, and good luck selling this game on the PlayStation Store and getting a modded version of it so that you can play it in English. So, yeah, your only real choice is piracy, I believe. And that is kind of disappointing, because this series kind of doesn't exist anymore. It was kind of popular back on the PlayStation, and then on the PlayStation 2, you had Robot Alchemic Drive, which I believe was it was actually going to be related to a specific anime. I can't remember the name of it, but then they just like reskinned it to be a completely different game. And then they released like a semi-sequel to it in the form of like Gigantic Drive, and then they produced a proper sequel in the form of Remote Control Dandy SF, which only ever came out in Japan. The other one actually came out as Robot Alchemic Drive in the US and Europe. So yeah, this doesn't really exist anymore. The only other game that is kind of like this is a game I've actually looked at in the past, which is Shushuju Mecha MG, which is by, again, Sandlight, and it's about controlling really big and unwieldy robots with unique control styles. And I'd love to see this concept taken on over the in a modern day setting, or just a modern day like console. Like, you can absolutely get the scale up on the PlayStation 5. You can do it on the same level as like Earth Defense Force, and nobody would really care because they've already shown they're good enough at making this believable in terms of scale when it comes to the Earth Defense Force series. But I guess D3 Publisher is just keeping them around. I could not remember for the life of me what the uppercut button was in this gameplay clip. I'm sorry about that. Also, I just tried jumping at him and that did nothing. But yeah, any way you can get your hands on it, I would wholeheartedly recommend that you do, because remote control D&D is really enjoyable. And I'm going to have to go play the 2 sequels on the PlayStation 2 now. It's got... The action is really satisfying. It's got a great sense of scale. These robots, thanks to the fact they've put a good job in on the presentation and the soundscape, it really does feel like they're fighting pretty damn well. There is a reason to try and finish these battles off as quickly as humanly possible. There is a decent little story going on the outside with a well-done fan translation. It's going to be one of those, to borrow a Metal Jesus Rock's thoroughly defiled phrase, a PlayStation hidden gem. With that said, I'm going to shut up and let you watch like the last minute of this robot fight. This has been Blue Maxima, and I will see you all next time.